It's time for some introductions to our panelists. We have today with us as panelists Erik Rind, Ilonka Jankovich, and Yael Kaufmann. Erik Rind is a CEO of ImagineBC. He is an expert in understanding the largely untapped potential that blockchain and AI technologies bring forward to help secure users' data. He has had significant exposure to writing software in the HCM space and is in the position to bring these skills to his new company. Erik graduated from George Washington University in 1983 with a BA in history. Erik has over 30 years of experience in building advanced technology solutions and has been involved in the HR services industry since 1990. His professional track record includes starting and then selling PowerPay software for $22 million and becoming president and CEO of Lyceum Business Services until 2018, when he chose to embrace his entrepreneurial side. Additionally, Erik is an advisory board member to Vertalo, DashHub, and HealthWiz. Our next panelist is Ilonka Jankovich. Ilonka is a serial entrepreneur and investor. She built 2 market leader companies in the HR space and sold them to Monster and Randstad. 6 years ago, she became an investor in the worktech space and started the corporate venture fund for Randstad. Randstad Innovation Fund has made 20 investments in the worktech space in Europe and the US. She's also on the board of several worktech companies and on the board of Exact, a large SaaS fintech player owned by KKR. Recently, she founded Taptro Ventures, an independent venture fund with Paul Jacquin and Florian Chilla. Taptro Ventures will back data-driven ventures that transforms the workplace. It will invest in worktech startups that provide solutions to enable a distributed workforce and improve professional journeys. Ilonka is very passionate about supporting startups to reach their full potential by looking at the blue oceans and handling setbacks. The goal is to have a positive impact on the way people work. Our next panelist is Yael Kaufmann, co-founder and COO of Learnin. Learnin is the first comprehensive upskilling as a service platform, helping companies solve for every barrier that stands between them and the future of work. She's an investor turned operator and lifelong learner who believes that learning neither begins nor ends with a degree. Yael began her career as an investor in private equity and was an impact investor and fintech entrepreneur prior to co-founding Learnin. Yael earned her MBA from Harvard Business School, her BS in mathematics and finance from the College of William and Mary, and her passion for education from a decade of teaching and tutoring. We also have with us today our extended panelists, Raj Sharma, Seema Chaudhary, Steve Glesher, and Ward Chrisman. We are so excited to be here with you all today. Now it's time to introduce our host for today's session. Our host for today's roundtable is Dr. Vikas Joshi. Dr. Vikas is a business leader who is passionate about product development and technology entrepreneurship. His mission is to help create software products that make a difference, and a key part of that mission is to inspire tech professionals and entrepreneurs grow and develop. We welcome you, Vikas, and over to you for the session.
Thank you very much, Sarita, and welcome everybody. Once again, delighted to have you and honored to be with you and with our panel today. Here's what we promise you. At the end of the session, we're going to learn about emerging markets in HR tech and work tech, understand opportunities to take advantage of the changes in the markets, and find some ideas to fast track go-to-market with fast development and partnerships. So how are we going to do that? Well, here's a game plan. We're going to start with Harbinger's view of work tech, just sort of get through the alphabet soup a little bit, study the growth drivers, figure out the new opportunities, and dive into fast track market entry. So if you're ready, let's go right into it. First, what is work tech? At Harbinger, we do a lot of work in this space. We help dozens of tech startups, growth companies, as well as large enterprise software vendors that are in the broad space of work tech. And based on our understanding of this market, here's a simple way to understand work tech. It's really a combination of three spaces: HR tech, collaboration at workplace, and productivity. So really, if you think about it, HR tech has to do with workforce, collaboration has to do with workplace, and productivity has to do with work. And those are the three things that get together to form the broader work tech marketplace. Now, just to get one level deeper, right in the middle here is HR tech. Let's start there. Here we encounter everything that helps us manage employees, the entire life cycle from recruiting to outplacement or retirement. The kinds of technology you will find here is HR information systems, applicant tracking systems, learning management systems, learning experience platforms, benefits, payroll, and a ton of different point solutions that help along the employee life cycle. That's HR tech. That's the world many of you live in. Over on your left is an interesting adjacency that's growing super fast, and that's collaboration technology. Here we are talking about Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Slack, email, or enterprise social networks like SAP Jam, and many other point solutions in the collaboration space. This technology is obviously growing super fast because of the work from home movement. And over on your right is productivity technology. So there you have solutions like Salesforce for salespeople, Zendesk for support people, or Visual Studio for developers. So this is the setting, these three pieces make up work tech. So this is a perfect time to bring in our panel and learn from them how they see this space. So moving on, here's our panel, and I'll start with my first question to all three of them. How do you see the HR tech space transforming into a broader work tech in the coming years? And specifically, what implications do you see of the broader work tech movement for your business, your investments, or your products? I'm really happy that we have such a great panel with us today. So maybe we could start with you, Erik. Is that okay?
Sure. Right. It's an interesting question, because I faced that exact question about 2 years ago when I made the pivot to actually move away from HR and into a much broader space of personal data monetization. But it's still relevant to your question, which is, I've spent 30 years in the HR payroll space, and I've had 3 or 4 different startups in it, and I started to look to the future, and I saw an interesting change in the market, in that I think what here in the United States we call W-2 payroll, full-time employees, people who you got to chunk out and process HR benefits and payroll for them, every week, every 2 weeks, whatever frequency. I see that as a shrinking marketplace. And I think the gig economy is going to take over. And interestingly enough, where I began to see that myself, and it got reinforced when I was talking with a number of insurance companies, and their own research says the same thing. And you think they're worried about it, right? These insurance companies that sell group life plans. Well, what if there's no group, right? So it is very much has to be in everybody in this space mind is, what is the workplace going to look like 5, 10 years from now, possibly sooner? And many things are driving that. AI robotics is going to simply reduce the number of people in the traditional workplace. Sure. The COVID-19 has had everybody re-examine what work is going to be, which is, I think, is very timely for this presentation. So certainly you got to imagine that the traditional W-2, benefit plan, that's going away. And you got to think of solutions that's going to integrate the gig economy with still the same regulatory needs that the HR W-2 space had.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a great frame to start the discussion with, because it's that mega change that has implications for everything, right? In employee information, tracking of records, background checks, employee development. Almost every part of the employee life cycle now looks different because of this gig movement and the way it interacts with compliance.
And the more fluid we make all this personal information,
sure,
the more important a technology like blockchain, which is where my focus became,
sure,
is going to become.
absolutely.
Right? Email is not a secure mechanism for passing information amongst groups. I'm not even sure this Zoom is secure.
Sure,
So.
sure. And I'm sure we're going to talk more about that as we go, because I know blockchain has important implications for employee information and ownership. If Ilonka, if you would like to come in with your initial thoughts.
Yes, yeah. Well, to add to Erik, and I think you touched upon that already, is that we will have a very distributed workforce. So it's less permanent employees, it's more freelancers, more gig workers, more outsourced work, more an automated workforce, and we need to bring everybody together and make sure that it's a productive way of collaboration. So on the other hand, you see that people will switch quicker, will work as an independent contractor, then move to a permanent job, then start their own business. So if you look at the whole professional journey, and that's where we see work tech, so our definition of work tech is broader, you will need to find the job online for the project. You will need to find how you can reskill yourself for the next gig or the direction you want to go in. You will need to plan your personal finances. You need to stay healthy in a job.
Mm-hmm.
So work is becoming more broader, and the responsibility of individuals becomes bigger on one hand, but the responsibility is also expected from the employers. So we see work tech as that whole full circle.
Perfect. And again, we'll talk a little more about your, the kind of opportunities you see in work tech in just a few minutes. I'd like to come to you, Yael, with your views on the same question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And thank you all for having me here. I'd say that for me, a lot of what work tech means is kind of essentially expanding beyond the typical definition of work. So we've already touched on some of the big macro trends that have shifted to distributed teams, that have shifted towards the gig economy. Mm-hmm. I'm really glad that Ilonka brought up reskilling and upskilling, but I think the entire nature of work and the historical way that we've talked about it is changing, and it extends from now education. And a lot of the ways that we talk about education is interesting because I'm as guilty of it. It's in my bio, but we talk about our degrees that we got, however many decades ago, as if that's like the most pertinent part of the education, but really the decades of work experience are even more relevant, right? And in a world where the shelf life of skills is decreasing, what you learn on the job, what you learn to upskill yourself and reskill yourself more regularly is only more important. And so that's part of what my business focuses on. So a lot of where I spend my time is thinking about the fact that half the workforce is going to have to get upskilled or reskilled in the next few years. And every year for the last several years, a BCG, McKinsey, Deloitte report has come out with every year the number going up and to the right. Now it's 80% of CEOs are worried about the availability of skills. Well, in a world where you're talking about people changing between jobs much more frequently, in a world where you have to not only attract and retain talent, but then also develop that talent for strategic business objectives, right? There is kind of this zero-sum war for talent in a lot of ways that is unsustainable, and where you know that the influence of technology is only going to increase on your business, and you're going to have to learn how to dynamically acquire skills in data. And that goes everywhere from data literacy at the executive and board level to data science, data analytics, data engineering, all these things, these are ever changing and ever permanent parts of our lives now as business people. And it's incumbent upon us to, I think, really prioritize a lot of those shifts in the way that we learn, and the fact that we do as employers have to start taking more responsibility for upskilling and reskilling our workforce, not just because it's the right thing to do, because it's the good thing to do for business.
Absolutely. That's such a powerful set of themes on which to open today's discussion, because upskilling, reskilling is big, building capabilities dynamically, absolutely, and the zero-sum war totally does not make sense. You have to develop new capabilities. So great. Thank you. And we'll have more questions for you as we go. Let's move to growth drivers and opportunities in work tech now. The primary growth driver obviously is, you guessed it right, work from home. And here's some interesting market data. First of all, 2.5 times more investments in North America in HR and learning technologies in the July to September quarter as compared to the previous quarter. That says something. According to the C-Suite IT Investment Service survey, 46% respondents prefer Microsoft Teams as their primary collaboration tool. And then till the end of 2021, 25 to 30% workforce will work from home multiple days in a week. In other words, even if they do not have to, they will probably prefer to. So how do entrepreneurs benefit from all this? We started in big frames, but we want to get down to really the pursuit of opportunity, which is the primary concern of any entrepreneur. Where are the opportunities? How are we gonna benefit from this? And that's what we're gonna see next. And as we start looking at opportunities, we have to start looking at the intersection of collaboration and HR technology. If you start thinking about how HR tech and collaboration could create new value, think about faster action on HR tasks as they get embedded in the flow of work. Think about nudge learning, something that happens in the HR world where there is, performance management, one-on-one meetings, manager to direct conversations, goal setting that propagates into collaboration systems. For example, in Teams or in Slack or Zoom, as little learning nudges that are sent out at just the right time to embed learning in the flow of work. Distributed workforce management, all these are examples of opportunities at the intersection of HR tech and collaboration. Just to see one industry example, Microsoft and Workday have a partnership for Teams and Azure integration precisely for that reason, because people live inside their collaboration world, be it Teams or email or Slack or what have you, and they would like to see some of their HR tech propagate into that. One of our customers is a continuous performance management platform vendor for contingent workforce. That's something I think Erik briefly alluded to earlier. We are helping them build a Microsoft Teams app for giving employees instant feedback rather than employees having to log in to their web-based application. So in other words, the web-based application is good for performance management, but the feedback is propagated into Teams. Another example is we're working with a training provider that relied on physical classroom for training. And during the pandemic, like everyone else, they needed to integrate their training platform with Zoom. Today, their entire training business has gone virtual. You may have read that Zoom just released Zaps for better integration of outside apps. And that could be an opportunity if you have a point solution and you would like to expose some of its features to Zoom, then you might want to look at the Zoom Zaps integration. Moving over to the right, you have productivity. Now, how does HR tech interact with productivity tools like CRM or support systems? One obvious application is measuring learning and training effectiveness. Another is correlating productivity with engagement. So you have a piece of data that resides in the productivity systems, namely the productivity data, and the other piece, which is learning or engagement, resides in the HR tech. And the two could be brought together through integrations. And here's another example where Workday and Salesforce have a partnership now for better productivity and back to work solution. One of our customers at Harbinger is a sales training platform, and they realize the challenge of in-person sales training in the near future. As a solution, we help them integrate their training platform with Salesforce CRM to enable in-app content and also provide with feedback and insights to training managers in the HR systems. So what I'm trying to say here is on both sides of HR tech, there are these interesting adjacencies that have emerged to make a whole work tech ecosystem that gives you additional value creation opportunity. And that sort of brings us to the last part of our presentation, which is how to move fast and grab some of these opportunities. As a point solution vendor, you are anxious to make sure that your customers, find ways to use your applications more and more. So how do you do that? I have two ideas to propose to you, and they are exactly as simple as they sound. Build faster, partner and integrate. Let me go into each one of them. We have a SaaS startup as our customer that wanted to create a solution for construction contractors. They employ blue-collar workers like electricians, carpenters, plumbers. They were providing a unique solution to this non-tech savvy market. So they wanted to make it super easy to use. I mean, that was the most important thing for them. The number one thing was anybody on the construction site should be able to use this workforce management solution. So they decided to build everything, all features in their application, such as task status reporting, attendance recording, safety training, chat, even provision to call emergency services. Now that was a big roadmap and they had to build fast. So they decided to use Harbinger, that is us, in their product development plan. And we were able to roll it out rapidly. The other strategy is to partner and integrate. One of Harbinger customers is a leading customer data analytics company. What they do is they have a great standalone product that would go around and look at a variety of business social network data that is pertinent for producing actionable insights for salespeople and marketing people. They realize that their target users, and that is the sales and marketing people, live in the CRM systems all day long. And to make their product more acceptable and to provide a better work experience, they integrated the product with Microsoft Dynamics App Exchange. Once they did that, it helped them acquire new customers and leverage features and data that was collected in the CRM. So sometimes it makes sense to do everything yourself and build it as fast as you can. Sometimes it makes sense to strategically partner with systems where you can ease the workflows and generate extra revenue opportunities through partnering. I want to invite our panel here now to share their experience on these couple of different issues, the opportunities in work tech, as well as the fastest way to move forward for entrepreneurs. So I'm going to start with Erik once again. If you don't mind, Erik, maybe you want to help us a little bit with your thoughts and views on some of these questions. You can pick and choose any and share your ideas.
Sure. I mean, I guess I'm a pretty good use case for both sides of what you just discussed. Okay. Because when I started ImagineBC, when I pivoted, I should say I still have my HR company, but we're investing the profits of our HR company into ImagineBC. I decided to run ImagineBC as a very different company. I knew we wanted to own our intellectual property, which means we had to design and own the code. That was, but I didn't want to have any employees. I wanted to see if you could actually run a company without employees. And so there you have it, right? We have built faster. So we designed the code. So, and we partnered with Harbinger to do the building for us. And that also every other aspect of our company, marketing, sales, I've outsourced to trusted professionals who have been there and done it. So I didn't have to spend time hiring people, and I might pay a little higher premium for their expertise. But if you balance that premium against not having to pay benefits, not having to deal with sick days, right, and all of those issues, then as a very small startup business, I strongly encourage you to really look at that partner integrate platform for many of your business items. Now, what does that mean in regards to tech? Well, I cobbled together a bunch of different tools to be able to manage all of this. And I've had decades of experience to do it. If I was a young 23-year-old, I'd probably be overwhelmed. So I think the definition of work tech is on that integration, where we have to have expanded tools, even beyond what a Teams can do, to be able to manage where I have 5, 6, 7, 8 partners working for me on a daily basis. Decisions have to be made almost as if they are my department. So sure. I think both are extremely important.
And if I may interrupt you, other than Teams, can you give some examples of other types of partners that, in your case, make sense?
Oh, sure. Well, Teams is just software, right? So in my case, I have social media people. I have a group that I outsource essentially my marketing to, public relations, my accounting, right? Everything you think in a traditional company, I have outsourced that function to others.
Sure.
Now, I still have to make them act like they're a single company. Mm-hmm. So on any given day, my workforce will vary from 20 people to 65 people, depending on what the tasks are, you know, and what that day brings. I don't have 65 full-time employees, but I have a major management, you know, challenge. So I think the tools will be to bring, you know, for teams to expand into task management, you know, integration of a number of different tools out there into a more fluid management console, if you want to think about it, or dashboard for senior management startup of a company. I mean, any given company usually doesn't have more than 1 or 2 or 3 founders. They're the power and the genius behind it. They just have to go find the right partners to make their vision happen.
Got it. Would you like to weigh in, Yael?
Yeah, sure. So I'd say there are kind of two different questions here. For me, a part of what our business does is help companies understand the ROI of investing in their talent. It's almost inevitably ROI positive to invest in your workforce, particularly in areas of hard to fill roles, digital skills, soft skills, a lot of the things that are always at the top of the list of the skills that companies want to be successful. And so part of what we've done is built a product, a SaaS product that we sell to companies that helps them kind of have the right incentives of time and money to put people through programs and help unblock all the barriers to upskilling, and do so in a way that's like an ROI positive way for the company and is helpful for both employers and employees. I'd say part of what we do is, in order to make that happen, is, well, it's actually just a pretty straightforward series of numbers that I put in a white paper on our website, learnin.com. Feel free to check it out if you're interested. But it's very kind of, it's not rocket science, but it's about productizing it and making it easy for people to use and understand that we can tie into their HR systems, we can use industry data for benchmarks. And it's kind of about having a mix of these different options to equip people with the tools they need to be successful.
Sure.
In terms of what we do from a business to partner in order to achieve any of those different objectives, there's certainly, you know, I can appreciate what Erik's saying, where, you know, I certainly am not going to be in the business of writing individual checks to everyone on payroll and all these different things, right? There's an infinite number of like payroll providers that have solved that for me, right? There's any number of bookkeepers and tax folks that I can have externally from the company, because it's not, you know, critical for me to have that in-house. You know, in terms of engineering, you know, there's only, you know, certain types of people that you need as full-time staff. And so it makes sense to be dynamic about the way that you hire and acquire those different types of skills. What do you need permanently? What do you need for a sprint? Do you need an extra design resource? Do you need an extra, you know, back-end resource, you know, for a short period of time, but not necessarily for the interim? And then you can ramp up hiring in the future. It's all a function of what your business needs are and how to best solve for what your needs are at that moment in time. So it's always kind of a short-term, medium-term, long-term, you know, series of trade-offs. And there's certainly a benefit to partnering early in order to speed up time to market.
Thanks.
Yeah, I can add to that, because as is clear, is that I'm still managing also the Randstad Innovation Fund, and we made 20 investments in HR tech companies. I am on the board of many of them, and if we look also when we are investing, we're really looking at the question: is the team, do they have a vision around integration? Do they know how to get there? Because you need to be part of an ecosystem. You cannot be standalone. So that's very important when we invest. Then after we invest, and that is also the case with Steptrove, is we need to make sure is that the company stays focused on their core ability and their core offering. So it's very tempting to say, oh, let's also add that, let's also add that. And that you should never do with your own core development team, in our view, because you get distracted and you have your platform becomes too broad and so on. So really focused, have a combination of your own developer force and also outsourced partly, work on integrations, be part of the bigger ecosystem. And that's also changing quite rapidly, as we have seen in your presentation. So that's what people need to anticipate and not do everything themselves.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, you can hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, let's see. There's too many windows. Give me a second. Okay. So this is the time to bring in our extended panel for some more open discussion. And so welcome to share your thoughts, Steve, Seema. Let's see, we have Subodh here, Raj, Ward. Feel free to go in any sequence, you know, all yours.
I can go. This is Raj Sharma.
Hi, Raj.
Because I really like the way you laid out the framework with HR tech in the middle, collaboration on the left as an adjacent item, and then productivity on the right as another adjacency. And I think, and I like to hear, you know, what everyone thinks about this, but also there is one piece that I think is becoming more and more important, which is sort of health and hygiene related. especially during the pandemic, right? So, for instance, it's very common for schools to verify the vaccination record or the immunization records of students coming in, right, in elementary schools and high schools. And I think we might see the same kind of thing where employers, and regardless of whether they're employing freelancers, as long as they're coming to work, and maybe the work is at a warehouse or construction site or whatever it is, or even in the office, that they would want to know whether this person has been vaccinated or not, whether this person has had COVID or not, and has that person recovered from COVID or not, and just kind of do a screening every morning when they check in, and even if it's as simple as a daily self-assessment test. And I think that's a big sort of another adjacency to HR tech that I think we are going to see, and I think it creates opportunity, especially for companies like mine, HealthBiz, which is very, very focused on sort of health tech, and then putting it back into the context of HR tech. So I'd like to see what people think about that. Is that something that you think employers are going to start essentially badging employees, if you will, with just like TSA pre-check does, right? So can you pre-check your employees before they interact with other employees?
No, absolutely. I think we have a blockchain expert here. Go ahead.
Well, Raj and I know each other well, and I think you would agree that blockchain is an excellent tool for dealing with that. I think the issue is a bigger issue than technology. I think what are there's law, right? What's the legality of testing, and if I turn down or fire an employee because they don't agree to vaccinations, and that's outside the realm of the discussion for today. So, but I think Raj is absolutely right. We're moving in that direction, and if we do move in that direction, then you're going to need a trusted platform to do it. And today, blockchain is the platform that provides probably the safest way to ensure integrity within that system, that nobody's tampering with it. So, absolutely agree with you, Raj.
Thanks, Erik.
I'll throw a question out there, because with Yael's working on, it got my mind thinking about two things. Yael's speaking as about upskilling and training your employees. Meanwhile, we've spoken a lot about the fact that employees are going to stay with you a lot less time. And and I've been a small company for most of my life. I started with Pricewaterhouse, huge employee pool. After that, I didn't have a large employee pool. So the thing that drives an entrepreneur nuts is when they've invested all that time and money into somebody and then they leave, right? They're just getting to be a productive employee for you and they go sell that to the open market. Well, in a world where we're talking about employees staying with you even shorter periods of time, how much should I really invest in upskilling those employees? And I'll turn it over to Yael in a second, but I was starting to think about it, and I think that's where AI, ML technology is going to play a very big role in products where Yael would probably be involved, which is I want to capture the expertise of whoever's performing these roles inside some type of AI, ML capability, such that when I bring somebody on, I get them up to speed much faster. I'll turn it over to you, Yael. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up, Erik. I think there's a lot of interesting kind of ways to take that, and I'll take a couple of different approaches. One, there's any number of resources that will point you to the kind of improvement in retention and attracting top talent with offering something like tuition assistance. So tuition assistance is offered by like half the Fortune 500. It's a massively underutilized benefit. It's tax advantaged in the US up to $5,250 in the most kind of common use in the IRS tax code. And at $5,000 for a lot of entry-level employees, that's a huge kind of part of that salary. And so it is disproportionately something that has been used largely to kind of attract and retain frontline, like kind of entry-level employees. And companies like Verizon, AT&T had this Workforce 2020 initiative where they invested $1 billion, $1 billion, that into upscaling. And you hear Amazon talking about $700 million. All these companies are starting to realize that. because it's actually good for their ability to retain talent. Now, that's something that, oftentimes historically there's been sort of clawback provisions or something where you have to be here for 2 years, either before or after, whatever it is, we'll handcuff you. A lot of MBA programs do the classic, you go work at, BCG, whatever, for 2 years, go to, an HBS, come back and you owe us 2 years. And if you leave, there's some sort of a flurry to go get a loan product that's comparable and whatever, and it's onerous and it's not transparent. There's a lot of interesting approaches that have found their way into the consumer fintech world, like ISAs, so income sharing agreements, that have yet to find their way into the enterprise world. And so we've partnered with some of the top tier, outcomes oriented financing partners and training providers to solve for a lot of what you're talking about. So for instance, you could have some sort of an ISA product that helps a company put, not just more people through, because you can say 130 people can go through a program instead of 100 people, but every month that someone is staying, and the way that an ISA typically works is there's, a percentage of your income that you owe to the actual person who is providing the initial capital for whatever it is that you've put an ISA on, and you share your income based on this agreement. There's a minimum, so if your income, goes away for whatever reason, you don't owe any money. And if it kind of goes up, you owe a higher amount up to a certain cap. That's an oversimplification, but essentially what you could do as a company is have an ISA, and every month that you stay with the company employed, you waive that monthly payment. And if someone were to leave, they would pick that back up. And so there's all sorts of solutions that you can create with varying levels of kind of elegance to solve for any number of the different kind of barriers to upskilling, essentially. But I think it's a totally valid point, and I think that companies that are starting to realize that, hey, by playing in the zero-sum battle for talent, right? By just trying to pay someone more money and just have people bop around between companies, we are not going to fundamentally solve for the fact that a lot of the jobs are getting automated away. A lot of the skills that we need in, digital marketing, we need to just be adding these skills. We don't just need to be hiring more people, right? To the point about a more flexible workforce, a more distributed workforce, all these different things. Sometimes what you need is not necessarily a data scientist, but to teach your business analyst Python, SQL, or R, right? These are fundamentally different types of, pathways for companies and individual learners. And so it's a little bit of work to work with a company. And that's part of what we do, is help them understand what is it that we really need? What are the skills gaps we're trying to close? And how do we do that strategically, using a lot of the underutilized assets that are at our disposal, and kind of having some of these incentives and these programs to really just align all the different stakeholders in a, with external training providers, external financing partners, whatever the case may be. But yeah, that's some of what we do.
Yeah, thanks, Yael. But this is a very, very interesting idea. How do we embrace the reality that people are going to stay for a very short time, and we still want to use technology to thrive in that kind of environment? Other members of the panel? Anybody?
Yeah, I do. This is Steve Glazer. I just wanted to jump in on the whole idea of retention. I think that it's all of the tools that are out there, everything that everyone uses, the focus on the people is actually where we get lost, where we get pulled apart. So if HR tech is the center, the ecosystem, and you work your way outward, that fan out, sorry, I have an EE background. You look at the churn of individuals and folks in companies, everyone talks about retention and how they want to try to retain them. And they're using upscaling or high perf programs, and they're trying to get people engaged. But what's interesting is they're using tech on sort of an odd sort of a perspective. They're coming at this from a different direction. They're using tech to try to monitor. And I know this has been around for a long time. I'm ex-Air Force. I kind of understand monitoring. I understand upscaling. I understand how to keep people engaged, because most of your programs within a military system are 1 to 2 year long stints. And if you look at my career, when I got out in the late 80s, most of the stuff I did, I've been at 15 startups, and I've actually been at major organizations running global quality organizations, things in engineering. And the key has always been getting back to the person. So what I'm interested in finding out from everyone here is, if you are going to talk about the broad of work tech or HR tech or any of the other types of pieces together, the partnership that I'm interested in is, how do you see solutions partnering with the person? I mean, we're talking about skills, but skills don't always do it. Sometimes it's all about how you get them engaged in the work and how you keep them interested and how you prove to them that you are interested in them. So what I'm interested in finding out why I'm here is I'd like to hear from other folks out there across the spectrum. What do they see as a solution, or how do they see trying to fold these things together?
And Steve, I'll be happy to address your question there, because it's timely actually with the work tech as a name, and I like the way that Vikas has kind of framed that with collaboration on one side and productivity on the other. And like Yael was saying, you know, you have the different types of learning and training, and whether it's nudge learning or just-in-time training, I think that may be, Steve, is how it would help keep the employees engaged, because they're like, okay, I need to do this task. I'm not an expert at that yet. How do I become an expert, or at least more proficient or something, right? So feed them micro-learning and just-in-time type training, and then, you know, give them additional if they want to go there. And that, you know, that speaks volumes, I think, in terms of engaging the employee or contractor. You know, with the rise of the gig market continues to rise, and COVID certainly helped accelerate that. But developing the employees, you know, we heard from different folks here. It's so important, and it's hard. I know, Erica, you know, running a similar kind of virtual business without formal employees, but you know, there's definitely stakeholders, and some are, you know, extremely engaged. Some are more kind of ad hoc as needed. How do you, you know, do you need to be concerned about their health and safety? I mean, that's traditionally HR's role, right? So health tech is kind of in there too, because if HR has been the concern of health and safety, it's coming back around now with COVID and these other issues, and even mental health, right? Working from home. Everybody's maybe cut out for it takes a transition time. HR is there. Is there HR tech to help with that? Sure, the collaboration tools help, productivity tools perhaps help, but it's, I don't know about all of you, but I think it's gotten busier for all of us, at least in HR tech, and you expand that, and as you guys painted, you know, or because as you painted the work tech, there's a lot to consider now, and I think a lot of it falls still on HR's role if they can handle it. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, you just hit mental health. That's actually really where I'm going, is when I'm talking about the people. It is the health of the person mentally, right? And if it sounds like a lot of folks here have done distributed workforce. So I've had 160 team personnel in India. I mean, I've dealt with distributed work because I'm in engineering. That's my focus. So for me, I know what it's like when they're not close to you. And there used to be a saying, managed by the whites of their eyes, right? You come in, you want to have that physical presence. You want to touch, you want to see, you want to talk, you want to integrate with the person. And so when you get into mental health, that's where I'm kind of going again, or I'm going to tap on this one again. Tools don't do that. Tools have not been doing that. They actually kind of leave that. It's sort of a drift. We're all, oh, well, we'll give them a bunch of surveys and that's how we'll gauge it. Well, everybody's been in 6-month survey cycles, right? HR's been doing this for decades. I've seen it, I know it, but I don't do surveys. I go out and actually directly talk to the person. But I've had to do this digitally. I was in a University of Texas study way back in the late 80s around virtual work teams and workforces. And the whole idea here is it's always about the person. It's not a team. Yes, you want to gauge them, but that 3-stool accountability is key. And Yael actually got to that, which was that whole idea of accountability. How do you track that? Because that's still people, right? And if it's a 3-legged stool, there's a top of the stool, and that's where the ass sits. And that's the person in charge of the company. And that person has to really know what's going on. And I think we're back to people again. I'm going to keep doing it because I think the key here, what I want to see in work tech, if it happens, is the real threading between those 3 objects that Vikas put up.
Yeah, I think that you know, the whole role of technology should be to make life easier and to work better together. If you look at all the data which can be assembled through education, through health and so on, and that should be indicators to spend more time live together or virtual together. Because there's a lot of reports coming out right now, and also managers have even a harder job because you have to talk more and connect more to your people. So the role of technology should be, to take care of the basics almost, that you can do your work efficiently so that you have more time to talk to each other.
Yeah, it's a great point. And Ilonka, your comment earlier about ecosystem, yeah, any of the vendors supplying tech in the space, they've got to really, they've got to focus on the ecosystem as a primary go-to-market strategy, and it's hard to run the business, to build the tech and all these different things, and know what is out there beyond that. And part of our responsibility to the industry is we're building out a practice to be a navigator to help these HR tech exec leaders navigate the ecosystem, because it's constantly changing and it's evolving, and you could easily go off course without a navigator. And we think that's kind of the future. Just like a good manager would help the employee manage, they don't need to micromanage them. They should just help them navigate through their career or through their job. That's where I think the big opportunities are for engagement with the ecosystem to these days. Yeah,
Speaking
definitely.
of ecosystems, I wanted to ask Seema, what do you see? Are partnership working? Do you see different point solution vendors becoming successful with partnerships?
Thanks, Vikas. Steve, I completely agree that it's actually about people. I get that, but here we are talking about HR technology, and how do you really bridge that gap from technology to? That's always been on top of everybody's agenda. So I work in the partnerships part, alliances, building alliances for Harbinger Group. So the way I'm seeing this is, in my view, the traditional way of partnership has to change. It's how we partner with, we're partnering with Salesforce, we're partnering with whoever, Workday or whoever they are. In what's happening in this ecosystem is, most of the parties are not looking at partnership the way we just talked about, how the partnership should work. It's not about outsourcing only. It's about making each other mutually, basically facilitate, enable to do what we do better. And especially in today's I think challenge that we have, the productivity, and then the at the same time collaboration. So it's not only about tools, but how do we really make this possible in an ecosystem? So I'm not only going to Workforces and Salesforce. I want to take our learning products to people. I want to take our micro learning to companies, enterprises that should be able to reach out to their employees in this sort of world. So because to answer your question, I'm not 100% sure if our partnership ecosystems, the way we approach partnership is ready, is viewing the way we really need to cater to our employees, or the enterprises.
Yeah, but things need to get better, for sure, because those partnership structures were designed for business 20 years back, right?
Exactly.
As Ward would attest to it, the partnership person is the hardest to get on the phone because they're too busy to talk to partners. Now it has to be a lot more open, because you really have to have everything around the employee. It has to be an employee-centric experience. It's almost time for design thinking, imagining the employee's journey, and then all these different solutions have to sort of dance around and make sure that it works for the employee. So I'm going to just do a couple of quick closure slides, actually just one, and then bring back the panel for a last word. Basic takeaways are collaboration and productivity is here. There are new opportunities in work tech, and to fast track market entry, build faster, and or partner. Harbinger has product engineering as well as data engineering services. If I might invite my colleague Subodh to just say a few words about what we do. Your time limit for a shameless plug is 30 seconds. Go.
Yeah, thank you, Vikas, and a big thank you to all our panelists. It was very fascinating to listen to your ideas, the insights that you shared on the work tech view that Vikas showcased. So very quickly, what Harbinger does is that we help product companies as well as enterprises and provide them with the technology services for building products and solutions. And we also help them with some of their data engineering needs. And all of our customers, they're backed with a very strong consulting team that helps them on multiple aspects of their product roadmap. It could be in areas of cloud architecture, technology selection, implementation, or the whole user experience design. And I think user experience, as Vikas mentioned just a few seconds back, it will become more and more important as we look at all these things in a broader term. So thank you very much. And over to you, Vikas.
Thank you, Subodh. And one last word from each panelist, starting with Erik. I think each one has 60 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, 30-year career in HCM or the HR tech space, and probably for the first 28 years of it, it moved at a glacier's pace. And the last 2 years, unbelievable how fast it's moving, how it's changing. It's a completely different space. So you really have to keep an eye on what's going on out there. And it's not, ADP just chunks out paychecks anymore. There's all kinds of new solutions. I think it's a wide open space for people right now.
Sure. Thank you, Erik. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I got to drop off. Thanks, everybody.
Take care. Ilonka?
No, I'm just super excited about the times we live in and the opportunities which there will be. Yeah, I really hope that the world will be better as a result of that, and that technology will drive diversity, will drive equal opportunities for many. And I think if you look at what is happening, then that's possible, because education is going online, jobs are going online, and it will be a very interesting space to be in as an investor, as a startup, as a provider. So good luck to everybody.
Yeah, and good luck to you for your new fund as well. Is this the raise time or the deploy time for you?
It's the raising time, but it's going well.
Okay, wonderful. Yael, would you like to share something?
I'd love to, and I'd love to touch on a theme that I personally am quite passionate about, and Ilonka just briefly touched on, and that's on diversity and inclusion. So increasingly, companies are starting to have dedicated people teams that have a subset that is focused on D&I. And one of the things that we've found our message resonates is that a lot of that budget is spent on attracting talent, but not necessarily on retaining talent and investing in that talent. And it turns out if you are only promoting people who are able to upskill themselves on their own time and on their own dime, you're not going to end up with the representation at the top of typically historically underrepresented groups, because they have oftentimes other responsibilities, not the same support system. And so as we think about certain areas that are macro trends in the future of work, broadly speaking, I think it's incumbent on all of us to be aware of these other areas, these blind spots that we may or may not have, and think about the different second order effects of certain macro trends and how it is that we can be building solutions in order to build these broader work ecosystems that honestly make us all better off in the long run. And so I personally am a lot of what you said, Steve, about investing in people really hits home with me. And I think it's about making sure that every person is set up to thrive, because when we all thrive, the businesses thrive, and it's a virtuous cycle in that way. So
that's a brilliant,
and thanks for having me.
Brilliant note on which to end this webinar. I think we are privileged to be working in a field which lets us succeed professionally and do something really noble, which is to help the workplace and the workforce transform themselves. Thank you very much, Seema, Raj, Steve, Ward, for joining us as well, along with Ilonka, Yael. Subodh, thank you very much, and have a good day.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Vikas. Thank you, Yael.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care.